welcome to the Caspian Podcast, the podcast of the Caspian Post, with me, Mark Elliott. And hello once again, and welcome to the Caspian Podcast. Today with me, Mark Elliott, is Teresa Hamlin, according to whether she's being pronounced in Azerbaijani or her native American dialect. So Teresa is from Minnesota, but for 16 years, I believe, has been living in rural Azerbaijan. She's called herself the accidental entrepreneur, and that's because she set up a company with the somewhat misleadingly simple name of Azerbaijani socks. But today we're going to find out a little bit about what makes these Azerbaijani socks so special. But first of all, welcome, Teresa.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for having me.
And do tell us, because it's rare enough to spend 15, 16 years in Azerbaijan, but I gather that you're in Gusar rather than Baku generally, which is a town. Well, tell us where it is and how on earth you ended up being there.
Yes. Well, I originally came to Baku, and I lived in Baku actually for quite a few years. And then I ended up moving to Gusar to work there's a ski resort there, Gusar is in the north part of Azerbaijan. So I'm originally an English teacher, so I went there to teach English at the ski resort and just loved it. And so now I spend my time there and also in Baku.
And just to let people know, because I think it's even a surprise to some people to know that Azerbaijan has ski resorts. I mean, it's a pretty glitzy affair, isn't it? The Shardag Resort.
It is. It's quite the thing to see. So yeah, the skiing is pretty good, but the hotel and, all the environment there is very, high class.
Yeah, I got the impression a lot of people go there to see the ski resort rather than to actually be skiing themselves. So I gather you were there before it officially opened, and you were actually training the people that work there to speak English. Is that the idea?
That is. Right before it opened, like a couple months, I went there. So.
Now, was it at this point that you discovered the so-called Azerbaijani socks, or did that come later?
Yeah, I think it was during my first couple of years while I was working there. The locals all, like, if you go to any of their houses, they're always wearing them on their feet, but you can find some at the bazaar, but they tend to sell kind of their worst. I don't know why. They sell their worst stuff to the bazaar. And my parents had come to visit, and someone gave a pair to my mom, and she brought it to America and wore it every day, wore holes in it. So I think that was kind of and she was interested in getting another pair. And I was like, well, how can I find another pair for you? So I started asking people, and people were interested in selling them from their homes, but wasn't a place that a person could buy them. So that was kind of how it's.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is, for those who are watching the video, do you have one of the traditional style ones that you could show us in the traditional materials, that we could just see what you mean? Because I think it's important that people realize when we say socks, this is more like a slipper with a stocking leg. And it's all made in, well, you tell me, what sort of materials are they typically made of or traditionally made of?
So we have two different kinds. We have the short kind. So this is if you're looking on the video, it's just up into your ankle. And it's a knit, more like house sock. So this is a traditional kind of one they wear in their house. And they also have the long ones. They come up about mid calf. And we're using, it's not totally natural materials. The ones that they used to make were made from their own sheep, and they would make their own yarn. But nobody's really doing that anymore, unfortunately. So we buy our materials from Turkey.
Is that because the local wool just feels too rough on the feet? Is that the problem?
Yeah, it's quite rough, so it's not super great. But even all the locals prefer. They always, when the locals want to buy socks, they come asking for, do you have any of the real wool? So I think they like it for kind of its health purposes. But I did find some women who know how to make the yarn from wool, but they just say, no, it's too hard. We're not doing that anymore. That's too much work, too many other things to do. It's I guess they would probably, sell it for, they would have to sell it for so much money to make it worth all the effort.
Yes, because wherever you go in museums across Azerbaijan, you see the old spinning equipment, and this was obviously a thing you did. But traditionally, isn't it true to say that the socks were part of the bridal dowry? Can you talk us through how that worked?
Yeah. So like, especially in Gusar, where I first started the business, we, the women, there would be some women in their villages or in their town who knew how to make these socks, and they would hire them to make me like 20 pairs of socks for my dowry, and they would bring them with them when they got married, and they would have a couple pairs for themselves, because they don't last forever. They would give some to their mother-in-law and their new sisters-in-law, and I don't know, all the other kind of women in their house, in their new house. So it was like a present for them.
Now, Azerbaijan, for example, this is just one of many books I have on Azerbaijani carpets, and the literature goes on and on about carpets, and yet from what I gather, to some extent, within the realm of making socks in of these traditional style, or these stocking socks or slippers, there is a similar range of local designs. Now, I gather you have branched out and actually have a whole series from different regions. Talk us through, how you've gone about sourcing them, and what are the main differences, if you could show us that.
Sure. So right now we're working in about 12 regions of Azerbaijan. So all the different
12 regions. Wow.
Yeah. Most of our knitters are living like in mountainous regions, or just in general, like kind of the colder mountainous regions are the place where they've traditionally made these socks. So like I said, I started in Gusar, and the Lezgis, which is a people group, they're very famous for their socks. So for example, they like making this very red glandular and green. So this is like their kind of traditional, like very traditional looking sock, if you can see on the video.
So let's just describe that. So you've got are the colors important, or is it more the actual motifs?
The colors are very important. They really only do like the socks up there in these colors. But they have like, this one has some kind of like flower on it. So then a lot of them have flowers, and also they have this is also an apple. They call this an apple in the Lezgi.
And for those people who don't have the video, this apple is very much a stylized, isn't it? So it's sort of let's have a look at that. So you've got, and would you say that is typical again of a Lezgi sock with a so it's almost like an Lezgi. Yes, okay. It's almost like an arrow going through, like a William Tell sort of thing. So the apple with an arrow passing through it almost.
I think they have like little leaves here on the edges. So.
And that, how much these shorter socks, rather than the ones that come up all the way up your leg, this one, for those who aren't looking, just goes around the ankle. Is that something that you have adapted, or is that another of the possibilities of traditional design?
No, this is very traditional, to make the short ones as well. So this is something more like, especially men, men would wear these, women too, but they're more practical than the long ones. They're just easier to slip on and kind of keep in your purse if you're going somewhere else or something like that.
Okay, so Lezgi, and just for those people who don't know these terms, the Lezgian people are an ethno-linguistic group which straddle the Russian, or Dagestani Russian, and Azerbaijani borders up in the northern mountains of Azerbaijan. But you said you go for 12 different regions. So what else do we have?
So let's see, we have, so you saw like in the Lezgi style, they kind of have like this, it's a separate kind of part of the heel and the toe. So
the heel is sort of plain, whereas the design is at the front toe. Okay, right. Lovely.
But you can see these socks then. These come from Lerik, and those who are just listening, they have just a design all the way, like, to the heel. So it's, I don't know.
Yes, so here we've got basically dashes and zigzags, which work their way right around the heel, and then this lovely diamond pattern on the foot. So when you're looking down, you'd see that. Now you say that's from Lerik. Lerik is, whereabouts is that in Azerbaijan?
That's in the southern part, and the people who live there are like the Talish people, so they have their own style of socks. They also have kind of like a different style of long socks. Like if you look at the heel, like the pattern goes all the way to the heel, in the lyric style long socks, but like in the Lesky style socks, they make a heel. Can you see the difference here? So they like kind of
Yeah.
like have a one color, like different heel. Whereas, so they just have like a little bit of different, kind of knitting, the ways that their grandma and grandpas and all those people,
Hmm.
grandmas, taught them how to knit. So they're just a little bit different style.
If in your opinion, which is the more comfortable,
Um,
or does it not? It just has a difference according to your
yeah,
own sense of style.
yeah, they're, I can't play favorites. They might hear
Right.
me.
So okay. So Lerik, as you say, is in the south, in the Talish Mountains. The Talish people also speaking their own language. Now,
Yes,
I think you even go further south into Astara and that area.
yes. Let's see. I have a pair of socks here from Asura. So they look something like this. So this is their style.
And again,
And they,
so to describe that to people, we're looking at basically like more like little squarish diamonds at the top, and then but a much more bold. Um,
a
what's the word for
chevron,
that?
chevron, I think they call this.
Chevron. That's the very word I was looking for. Chevron look. Yes. So are the chevrons particular to Astara, or is that this particular village?
Sure. I think this is kind of a common thing, I think, all over the country, especially for men. This is like the common, because the men don't want the ones with the flowers on them, etc. So this is quite a common,
Oh, I
I
see.
think.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the chevrons, it's more of a man sock. Um, Now, one of the lovely things when you're looking on your website, you don't just find these socks. You find the knitters. You invite, and I think it was the Astara village, was it not, that actually found you and invited you to come to the. Could you tell us the story about how that happened?
Sure, sure. So I went on to kind of the local channel TV here, and they were, interviewing me about what my project, and this mayor in Astara, he called me, he came and met with me in Baku and said, my village is full of women and they need jobs and they can knit beautiful socks. So I went down there and he had all these women and we gave them all kind of like samples. And out of them, we chose like 4 or 5 women who were able to make up to our standards of socks. So yeah, so sometimes people find us that way.
And yes, as I say, on your website, you have the personal tales of the different knitters, and I gather that one of the criteria is that you're really trying to see this as a community assistance project as much as anything. Now I made a note of a few of the. I think it was Narmina that was one of the people from the mountaintop in Astara, and
Yeah.
she was putting her daughter through nursing college. And there was Rosa who wanted to send the daughters to university. Which would you say was the most moving of the stories that you've come across?
Well, one of our first knitters that we started with, she used to be a Russian teacher, so she was very, refined, and her family got into debt. There was this time in Azerbaijan, where the manat fell against the dollar, so they had taken out some kind of loan, and they had to pay back, double what they were paying before because they had taken out in dollars. Anyways, so I found this lady in the bazaar in Gusar. She was just like sitting, kind of knitting, and I was like, so I started bringing her yarn, and I said, why are you sitting here in the bazaar? She's like, well, I'm trying to earn money. Anyways, so she ended up, one time I saw her daughter-in-law there with her. I'm like, take this lady home. I'm going to give her work. Why is she sitting? It's very cold there, and she's sitting by the fire kind of knitting. So we've been working with her for 4 years, and they've been able to pay back their loan. And kind of, she earns her dignity back by, I don't know, I guess it's, as a teacher, according to her, sitting in the bazaar is something, that's
Somewhat
not
demeaning. Yes.
Yeah. So,
And now, so how does it work then? If someone wants to be a knitter, do they need a lot? I mean, presumably these people don't have an awful lot of capital behind them. How can you help them get into business?
yeah, so basically my job is I bring them the yarn, and the ladies themselves, I mean, these are their socks. I personally don't know how to knit. I don't have any, experience in making, patterns or anything. So basically what I'm doing is just bringing them yarn, and then I buy their products from them. So they knit and I buy them from them, and then I market them to the West. So yeah, so everything is kind of their, their own job, and they don't have to have any capital. All they need to know is how to knit, or, most of them can learn from their neighbor or someone, some YouTube channel. We have some ladies teaching on there, etc.
And so, but you're actually providing the yarn, so they don't even need to buy that.
Yes.
Hey, okay. And now I think the one other thing I noticed on your website recently, that you seem to have the opportunity for people to have socks or stockings or whatever we want to call these wonderful things. Well, what by the way, what do we call them in Azerbaijani?
In Azerbaijani, they're called jorab.
Jorab.
So that's it's the same word they use for like a regular sock that you would wear in your shoe, but they also call it, depending on the area. So every area kind of has their own, just like they have their own, like patterns, they also have their own kind of word for them as well. So that's the general word for it. Jorab.
Okay. So if someone wants this made to measure jorab, is this, how much is flexible? Are they going to get their name put into it, or or is it completely made to measure? What sort of thing are you offering there?
Yeah, we do have some like Christmas, like holiday stockings where you can have your name written on them, like Santa Claus comes and puts them, in America we have this. So I've kind of adapted some things to try to, get the sales better, but then they like have the motifs, the traditional motifs on them. But as far as the long socks, I think we don't do much names. You just kind of buy it. You pick a size and you pick the colors you want, and you can buy them.
Right. Well, Teresa, I think it's absolutely wonderful. Are you planning to stay in Azerbaijan for the foreseeable future, or what's your personal plans now?
In Azerbaijan. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, we lost you there for a second.
Sorry. Yes, I love living in Azerbaijan and hope that they will let me stay here for a long time.
Well, I hope so too. And just in case people hadn't realized, when you say you have these interviews, you're doing this in fluent Azerbaijani, I gather. This isn't in English.
No, I also speak Azerbaijani. It's hard to, run a business in Azerbaijan without the local language, working with all these women. So I definitely need to learn to know the language.
And maybe even bits and pieces of Talish and Lezgi as well. I don't know.
That's right. Enough to make them happy and give them, yeah.
Well, Teresa Hamlin, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been listening to the Caspian podcast, and we hope you'll join us again in the future. Thanks, and see you soon.